Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the World Championship Series Round of 16 for WCS Winter. My name is PtitDrogo. I am joined today by ZvP here. We have got some amazing StarCraft action headed your way as we move into the second group stage for WCS Winter. How are you doing on this fine morning, ZvP?
I am so excited. As opposed to going on stupid dates and hearts and things, I get to go into the world of StarCraft.
I mean, we got a date with awesome StarCraft. That's about the best date you can get. Because you know what? Awesome StarCraft always calls you back.
Well, I don't know about that.
But of course, ladies and gentlemen, if you are new to WCS Winter, if you're not familiar with the format, let's go over it one more time for you guys. Of course, we had the round of 32 happening last week, the week before that, and the week before that, as we had a bunch of groups playing out. And this week, we are going to be moving into the round of 16. These are group stages. The top 8 players will be moving on to the round robin format, where it's going to be a round of 8. And then from there, the top 6 are going to move to an offline finals. Pretty awesome format, and it's nice that we're finally moving into the other stages of WCS Winter now.
Yeah, the round of 16 is seriously stacked, and then the round robin, which unfortunately I'm not going to be there, and I'm actually super jealous of you guys, but it's going to be super cool. Just the whole way that the winter is set up is very interesting.
Absolutely. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not familiar, we are going to be playing for a $60,000 prize pool per region. That's $60K for Europe, $60K for Americas, and of course $12,000 to first place. All the players that got knocked out last week and the week before still walk away with $675, and everything in between, as you guys can find here, and also in the WCS rulebook.
Yeah. Just, you know, on a casual Saturday morning, just flipping through that rule book.
This is actually, you make a joke about this, but this is what I actually do for fun in my spare time, is I go through the rule book. I know, because you've seen me, and you'll randomly get messages from me and be like, ZvP, did you know? But, guys, it's going to be a pretty fun day, because we got some really good players playing today. This is, as Nate said, this is where all of the top players have made it to, because that's how a tournament works. The best players get to move on, so the further we get into the tournament, the higher tier, the caliber of all the players is going to be. And man, this is a pretty awesome group. The first match, as you guys can see, is going to be Drogo versus Reynor. Then we're going to be moving into Mana versus Namshar. Namshar. He's nomming on those chocolates for Valentine's Day.
Is he?
But of course, then we're going to go into lower bracket match, winner bracket match, decider match. So a lot of good StarCraft today. A lot of Protoss versus Zerg, maybe a little PvP, maybe a little ZvZ.
Maybe. Wait, ZvZ.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Namshar.
I guess that could happen. Yeah.
Namshar and Reynor.
Yeah.
That's possible. But it sounds like you already have predictions about this first match.
Well, yes. I think we both have really strong predictions for these matches coming up ahead, but I think everyone's looking at Reynor, and rightfully so. He's probably going to take the group even easily, and that's not so much a, I'm not putting down everyone else in the group so much as I'm elevating Reynor.
Reynor's just that good. He is so good. As we ended up seeing last year, WCS Montreal, he took Cyril to the very edge in brought him to a Game 7 in the Grand Finals and everything. This guy is exceptionally difficult to beat. But the one little caveat I will say is that PtitDrogo specifically has taken Reynor to the edge in a lot of these best of fives, especially toward the end of last year, where Reynor was in really good form. So I'm with you. I still give a heavy favoritism to Reynor just as being a really, really good player right now that's just unbelievably strong. And Drogo had a little bit of a tough time at the round of 32, but this is arguably one of his best matchups historically. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very good point to make, because there is a chance that even though he can't make it out through Reynor, through the winner's bracket, that he can make it out by defeating Namshar and Mana, which, I mean, this is a really fun group, actually. But I'm going to focus on Reynor Drogo as we get into new repugnancy eventually.
Eventually, as soon as the players load the game. It's going to be pretty fun to see how things play out, because I feel like we don't get to see this map nearly as often as many of the other maps.
Yeah, it's maybe like 4th in line, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something around there.
Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, okay.
Well,
let's do it.
We're going to be starting down here in the bottom left-hand corner of the map, top of the blue Protoss player. He is PtitDrogo.
And in the top right, as the red Zerg, he is Reynor. Yeah, all right, so ZvP. As you said, Drogo, one of his best matchups here, and this is something that I will say on the flip side, Reynor might sometimes stumble against Protoss. So that's a very good point. I think Reynor, when I saw him in some of the qualifiers earlier this year, had some troubles against Protoss that I wouldn't expect. So maybe that is the matchup that I feel the least confident, because obviously there's a ZvZ with Serral. He has that kind of on lockdown. ZvZ is rather good for Reynor. His versus Terran, his style just fits so well with that, right?
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of Terrans in Europe anyways. But then Protoss, so many chances. So many games I've seen that Reynor not quite look as strong.
Yeah, for those who don't know Reynor's playstyle, if somehow you missed out on a lot of last year, it is a very exciting run-by harassment-based playstyle where he's constantly on the counterattack. He's facing annihilation and doom and destruction at his front door, and he's sending links to his opponent's side of the map, doing counter damage, and then narrowly managing to figure out how to defend. He's so good at that and just taxing his opponent's APM. But a lot of Pros players, they have that wall set up at the natural. It can be very difficult to break through a Protoss player that is very prepared and situated and set up. And also a Protoss player that just immediately takes the aggression to you and just leaves just the right number of units back at home to block off any lings from kind of getting that run-by attack, which I think Drogo is actually quite good at. This is something that Drogo is very good at, just putting the pressure on very, very quickly, and also just keeping your walls plugged.
Yeah, it's so much of fighting against Reynor is making sure that you don't get run by, basically. For Terran, sometimes that means that maybe mech is a little bit easier because you got those Helens, you got those Hellbats. But for Protoss, I'm not sure, like, you just have to pay attention more. Like, not necessarily an easier composition that you can do to make sure that Reynor doesn't do as much damage, whether it's with Lings or Roaches. Reynor is very active on the map and can truly complicate things. But we have a Stargate opener for Drogo after a lot of probe harassment. I was actually impressed with how much he was doing there.
Yep.
So I zoomed in on it.
And we have that first Adept make its way across the map, scouts out the third base, so it confirms, okay, there's no weird shenanigans happening right now. Reynor, I feel like typically pretty good when it goes into those macro games, and he gets the resources to actually do a lot of those run-bys.
Yeah. So that didn't do too much damage there, but the scouting is important to get that third base to see if there's anything hatching from those eggs that aren't drones. It's the most important thing.
Confirming that it's not going to be a Ling bust or a Baneling bust or a bunch of Roaches popping on out. But like you said, we are going to see that Stargate. So the Oracle is about to pop out, provide that high ground vision, likely going to follow it up into maybe a Phoenix or something. But we already have the Robo being added on. Wouldn't be surprised to see a Twilight Council follow-up. Drogo just playing very, very standard PvZ so far.
It's a very quick follow-up, Robo. So it's going to be scouted by Reynor, who also has an Overlord over here. Whoops-a-daisy. Don't pay attention to that. Actually, Stalker's going to try and kill this Overlord. Lings are waiting, though.
Yeah, I think he's just waiting for two more. No, he's just going to go for it. Oracle is going to use its energy to keep those Lings at bay. The Overlord still goes down, so Drogo pretty happy with that, I imagine. But funny enough, not going to be sending that Oracle straight across the map.
Yeah. He keeps the Oracle at home. He doesn't follow up with a Phoenix. Just immediately into the next stage of ZvP. So, might see a Warp Prism. There we go.
Yep. And just the fact that he went for a Robo, then Twilight Council, it does. So if you go for the Twilight Council before the Robo, just before it, then you can kind of start up on maybe a Templar Archives a little bit faster if you want to go straight into the Archon drop. But you're still going to go for the Templar Archives pretty soon after. We'll see with the Warp Prism popping on out. He can make its way across the map right around the time the Templar Archives finishes up. He can warp in for High Templar, more from the Archons, get that usual harassment going.
Yeah, exactly. And the Archon drop is going to be a lot more potent. You know, when it comes down to Oracle harassment, not really much happens there for the most part. Even when you include a Phoenix or even a second Oracle, but you get fast with that Archon drop, maybe we can see more of the control that Drogo can enforce on the game. You know, those Archons can be something you got to pay attention to. The Queen's got to be in position, sniping one or two at a time. Suddenly they don't have a lot of anti-air, as we are going into Roaches for Reynor.
Roaches, pretty common response to a lot of the Archon stuff. And actually, I actually like that we end up seeing Drogo going for the Archons, just because if there's less Lings out on the map, there's less chances for some of those run-by attempts. So as I say that, we have one of the Archons getting focused far down. It should barely finish up time. Oh, this is going to be so close. He loses one of the Archons. That's a massive gas investment. A huge loss for Drogo.
Drogo feeling a little overconfident because the Oracle was supposed to be accompanying that, but didn't have enough energy to actually help. A good grab by Reynor, who also gets a thorough scout into the main base and sees, there's a forge, although not researching anything yet. Only a couple of extra gateways, and he does know about the third base. He's now attacking the cybernetics core.
And there's just not enough DPS, even with the Zealot warp in over here.
Whoa, why did he... okay, well, I guess it's not that many links. Even if they got through, it's not a big deal, but I'm surprised he canceled that.
Yeah, it still sucks to lose your cybernetics core because you have to remake that. You can't make anything except for Zealots and now High Templar from the gateways for a little bit, which I guess is okay. He's going to be thinking about warping in more High Templars and getting up more Archons or more Zealots for the charge, but it is really still quite annoying.
Yeah, well, how many sentries has he warped in? Just
only two.
Okay.
Which is enough to hallucinate some Phoenix and get some additional scouting information, but he already has his Oracle live for that. He has an Observer out.
Yeah, as far as, like, seeing what's going on the map, Drogo, plays
the Observer.
Oh, well, okay, well, he doesn't have that anymore, but he still has the Warp Prism and the Oracle. So that should be fine as far as scouting goes and seeing the army movement if everything goes according to plan. It just, there wasn't a lot of sentries in case the roaches did come across the map. That would have been a little scary, but they were not made to go across the map. They're just defending right now. Reynor is sticking on roaches, though, and we do have an infestation pit here, and he has played with swarm hosts a fair amount in this matchup, so that's kind of what I'm expecting with the roach buffer backbone.
Oh, okay. Losing the Observer, it can happen. It sucks when it happens, but it can definitely happen. Losing the Oracle, especially if you didn't get a Phoenix or anything, that is almost your last form of scouting outside of hallucinating Phoenix, and you want to save some of the energy for the force fields.
Yeah, this is bad news. He doesn't know about the infestation pit, and
well, that's a nice snag.
He's,
a couple of roaches.
He's going to find out about the swarm host by being aggressive here. They're going to have to pop defensively initially, but hopefully Drogo with a recall, ready to go, or a couple force fields.
You might actually be able to get on top of that fourth base before the swarm hosts get into position, though.
I think so, yeah. But Reynor, willing to cancel that if the swarm hosts actually do their job here and get some decent damage done. Let's see. They can be really fickle. I mean, you just run away sometimes, and then suddenly they're at a lack of supply.
Okay, here we go. The Zealots charging on forward. They're getting in on top of that mineral line as well, but starting to pull back. Force fields being used on top of these roaches. Swarmos going in on top of the Archons. Some nice pickup. No. We end up having the Archons not quite getting picked off, but the Warp Prism taking some damage from the Corrosive Biles. Wow. Sentries starting to wear thin, and the Swarmos on cooldown. I'm
really surprised that Drogo's sticking around here, but a lot of the roaches are getting low, I guess. I mean, it's not that big of a Protoss army left over. The Oracle even comes in to help. Focus fires down the Ravagers. That's a really nice hit. And that Warp Prism, had it died, this would be completely over. But the reinforcements of the Zealots combined with whatever Immortals are left over are actually kind of punching through.
Yeah, and remember that there are a bunch of drones being chased down by a bunch of charge lots just south of all of this. The hatchery goes down as well. An Archon will go down at the end, but the Warp Prism keeps a handful of these units alive. And now Drogo just has to survive. He did a ton of damage, but he lost a lot of army supply.
Yeah, you know what? At the end of the day, at the end of that, I'm still on the whole idea of, like, I'm surprised that Drogo lasted as long as he did there. I thought he was going to recall after those force fields started to run out, as he is now at a significant lack of army supply, 110 to 36. Granted, that's only with the Locust in play, and they are kind of wasted a lot of time on that Zealot, but here they come to the third base. There's not much there to defend.
Going after the pylons right now, so Drogo is buying a bit of time. That Nexus still has a little more time before it starts taking a lot of damage, but now we end up seeing there's the Corrosive Biles. Here we go. Drogo is trying to come on in, but the Nexus goes down. Charge Loss trying to get in on top of these roaches. Some nice Warp Prism micro with the Archon, but as the Zealots fall, so are soon these Archons, the Immortals. And Reynor is going to back up, but sniping off that base is pretty important. The only kind of weird thing is that Reynor is also on a two-base economy right now. Yeah. So this is two-base versus two-base. The difference is Reynor has a much scarier army.
Oh, wow. Drogo actually being very aggressive with the Immortals. More power to him, as long as he has the Warp Prism and nothing to tear it down, but that was a little scary. Now they're kind of be coming from behind, which is a little bit awkward.
Dark Shrine is on the way, by the way, at the same time for Drogo, so if he can survive a little bit longer, there's not an Overseer with this army, but he ends up losing a lot of his Zealots. Once again, keeping the Immortals alive. This is such good micro, but the Archons start going down. The Immortals start falling. He only has 2 left, and this third base is going to get canceled.
Here come the Locusts. It's not a run by, but the same thing done. Reynor does take that first game, despite being a little scary around his third base, but those Archons were in this, like, Triforce of Corrosive Biles.
Yeah.
They got hit by every single one.
That was tough. I mean, in some ways, like I look at those kind of games and those situations, I'm like, this could have been really good for Drogo. This could have worked out really well, where you just barely managed to kill off enough of the economy, and then you narrowly managed to defend, you narrowly managed to get up just the units you need to. The Dark Shrine finishes up, and you actually push back a lot of those Roaches and Ravagers, or start sniping off the Swarmos or something. But it felt like it started to tip maybe like a minute or two before that game ended, and then we started just seeing like he kind of gets smashed at the end.
Yeah, there really are. There's so many factors going into that push. You know, I believe that Drogo delayed his third base gases to do that, so he wouldn't have that macro game, that storm. So maybe he felt very pressured to commit like he did. And if he didn't, if he just thought that that was going to be a good attack, I can see that too. It was a decent one for a little while there. Perhaps the Locusts were a big surprise. He never scouted the Infestation Pit. He was expecting Hydras, which would have done very poorly against those force fields. There's so many things that could have gone differently, but the Swarm Hosts ended up being the right choice and just barely out in time.
Yeah, it's one of those games also where you look at all the small little things. Like, imagine if you had one more Archon to help out with the harassment or something and keep Reynor at home for maybe even just a little bit longer because it didn't get sniped off by the Lings. And then he has an Archon back at home to buy a little bit more time. It's like all these small little things really add up in that game, I think, as well. So we'll hope to see Drogo maybe be able to make a little bit more of that kind of defense, or I guess the offense in his build work out a little bit better this next game.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I don't mind it being aggressive and the attack being quite dedicated.
Yeah,
I think that's a fair thing to do. But maybe I actually would like to see him be a little more cautious, pull back, play into a macro game a little bit longer. That's where I think that a lot of Zergs do find themselves.
How do you feel about doing that versus Swarmos specifically? Because I feel like that's one of those things where you either want to get really into the macro game, or you want to hit them right before the Swarmos really kick into gear.
Well, I think you should hit them before the Swarmos kick into gear just to control the game, but I don't know about dedicating versus them, right?
That's fair.
Which was the problem, you know. If he had kept his army alive and just positioned around the map and had all those gases, then the Swarm Hosts hopefully aren't as, as capable of getting those really good Locust waves, but that's what ifs, right? We're into game number 2. And in the bottom right, down 1, it is the blue Protoss Drogo.
From his new team, Makers, which is formerly known as Iron Chain.
Yeah.
And spawning up here in the top left-hand corner of the map, we have the red Zerg player at the young age of 16. He is Reynor. Team go.
Yeah, it might be difficult for Drogo to... I mean, it's, every player's an individual. They all have their ideas about how the matchups are, but where some Zerg players seem to really struggle during that later mid-game when that Immortal count's up higher, and it seems like maybe Zerg's a bit weak at that point, then the Protoss will say, well, if I don't win before they get to Broodlords, then I'm the one that's in super big trouble. So it's also, I think, more of a Drogo style to be aggressive like that. When I remember some of his stronger PvZ games, it was a lot about being aggressive, and then his micro would shine through and be able to barely push, which is almost what happened last game. So it's just like, it's Drogo. It works sometimes. It just needs to be like a little bit more crisp, a little bit more powerful, and he would have had Reynor.
Okay, well, we start off the game with a gate expand, as per usual from a Protoss player. Goes with the Cybernetics Core, etc. Wouldn't be surprised again, just because most Protoss players like to do this, but going for the double Adept opening, getting some scouting information, and probably following up with the Stargate once again. And from there, we're going to start to see some of the deviations you were talking about of whether he's going to go into more dedicated pressure or into something a little bit lighter.
And that whole, maybe being crisper or more powerful does go back to that awkward opener. The Stargate, I mean, it did its job because you got one Oracle. It was supposed to scout. So in that way, it did its job. That's meh, whatever. But the Warp Prism with the Archons, that was the bigger deal that didn't really end up doing anything. I mean,
it killed 3 drones, and it didn't kill any Lings. It didn't do anything else. Like, that was it.
Yeah, exactly. That has so much more potential that really Reynor didn't have to worry about too. Like, as soon as they killed one Archon, that is a big relief to a lot of Zerg players. So he knew just how much he could drone and tech, and that's one of those things that could have been different. So if Drogo wants to do it again, and then just like, you know what, I'm going to save the second Archon this time. Yeah, I'm fine with that. And if Reynor decides to go for that Swarm Host timing again, Drogo could have that more powerful attack. It rarely works out that way, though. There are so many options. in every matchup of StarCraft.
Ooh, we have the Stalker actually getting aggressive on that Overlord once again. A few Lings going to be making their little run-by attempt, but this is only 4 Lings, not 6 like before. So the 4 Lings can't really jump safely on the Stalker. The depth pops out just a little too late.
That timing, Drogo was, you can see him like spamming the rally point. That's annoying. You know, it's still a freebie scout into that Stargate, and while it's not the most revealing thing yet,
I see his Oracle first, at least.
Yeah, and 1 Ling's gonna hide, which I really like that, because it's the follow-up that I think is a lot more important.
Oh no, Drogo knows.
Yeah.
Gonna be able to find that and take that out. But yeah, you're right. It is the follow-up that's gonna be really important for Reynor to try and get a scout off on. So far, we just have the additional gateways being added on, but this at least does allow Reynor to know what the timing of his spore calls and stuff could be like, just because if you see a Phoenix first, usually you have a little bit more time to mine a bit longer, but just gonna have to start those up a bit sooner.
Yeah, not too big of a deal. Don't have any drones at third base. Certainly have to waste any time there. 2 queens with the natural. That's how it's going to go for a little while. It is going to be that second Oracle. This Overlord is not just going to stay around looking for those gas timings. It is going to head to that main base, which unfortunately Drogo can't do much about.
Yep. Ooh, gets a drone kill after forcing a cancel on the Spore Crawler. So the Oracle getting something there. And of course scouting out the third base, and hopefully should be able to see some larva hopping drones.
So he's going to have 4 Adepts pairing up with 2 Oracles then, which this Overlord's a little late to seeing, but the Lings see aggressive Adepts, so maybe he'll be a little more on guard.
Already loses one of the Adepts though, and one of the Oracles used a lot of its energy just trying to go after the Spore Crawler, getting 1 kill. The Adepts end up shading back, and the Oracles try going in with some of the Adepts on the outside of the map. Gets a Queen, might get a second Queen over here.
Yeah, but is that what you want? I mean, if you get the Queens so that the drones are suddenly open, then it is worth it. And I guess the Lings were used offensively, and he wasn't building any, so yeah, that actually worked out how you would hope. The Oracles live, the Adepts get on top of the drones, maybe not as much as you would hope, and they finally are being surrounded by Lings. There we go, but at least 5 drones went down.
Yeah, it was a bit more damage than I thought actually was going to happen, but you're right. Getting a couple of the Queens also still annoying. There's only 2 Queens and 3 hatcheries, so he's kind of missing on a few larva injects at a pretty critical time. But now we'll see if the Lings are able to get some damage done now that the Oracles have effectively no energy whatsoever.
A couple of Adepts are warped in back at home, and it seems like it's going to be enough. Reynor not going, you know, into a lot of Lings very quickly, but certainly a decent amount.
Okay, well, I think the second warp in, that's going to be a safe defense. It got a little bit scary for a moment because the Adepts were making their way around or away from the wall-in area, so it's going to be a lot of surface area if they got surrounded. But there's the double Robo, and we're going to be seeing a lot of Immortals pumped out. But interestingly, this game is going to be a Baneling Nest from Reynor.
Yeah, he's already investing in that +1 melee, so going to stick on that Ling, Baneling, probably Hydras as the game goes on. Has delayed his lair as much as he think he could have, and that's totally fine. He's going to finish like 620. So then the Hydralisk end, but he's got a lot of potential with these Lings because it's Reynor.
Yeah, I think this is the thing I like about Reynor being able to go into Baneling Nest. I feel like this is a lot better suited to his style. The Roaches are great and all, but it's when he's allowed to make a lot of Lings, when he's allowed to make some things like Banelings for big Baneling run-bys as well. That gets really scary, and because there's no Archon drop opening, it's a lot easier to go for that kind of style.
Yeah, I mean, and to really touch on that, there's no pressure to the Zerg in this game, really. There's the 5 drones, which was like an okay amount, I guess, but otherwise Reynor has gotten to 66 drones rather easily. He's building up those Lings to keep control of the map, and Drogo's still in that position where he's a little light on the Immortal count. Charge not quite done. It's certainly scary, but Reynor not going for a huge bust or anything, just looking for opportunities.
Whoa, okay, this is a very aggressive dive with those Lings. Loses a decent chunk of them. Forces out a lot of Force Fields, though, and I think there's only maybe 2 Force Fields left over.
I think that's exactly what he was hoping for, in that the Lings would not be caught in them, which they were not. So this is still good for Reynor as he sees the move incoming. Charge is finishing up. Drogo's trying to hit this very pristine attack, but okay, not quite with these gateways done, but +1 has finished up.
Oracles are over here to help defend the third base, but is that going to be enough? It is enough to scare Reynor back. Reynor pulls back, forces some energy from the Oracles, and is going to come home to try and defend. The Baneling's about to finish up, though. He did buy a little bit of time, just forcing Drogo to deal with all that, and he might be able to grab the sentries here.
Nicely done. Very nicely done. And those Lings could also come back again later on. But how about...
There's a lot of zealots.
Yeah, exactly. How about that number of zealots, man? Centrifugal Hooks just finishes up on a ton of creep, though.
Oh, man, this is such a difficult engagement here for Drogo. Baneling is getting some really good connections. They soften up the zealots, not quite killing them, but this attack just absolutely gets smacked down by Reynor.
Yeah, Drogo committing a lot to that. Did not actually put the guys in gases back here. Wanted to fake perhaps Reynor out, hoping that he wouldn't have enough Banelings, but that was just simply not the case. Despite the amount of zealots, Reynor was completely prepared, and that is actually going to put Drogo in a very difficult position defensively.
You know what I just realized is that Drogo, he did go for the double robe, and I thought that he was going to go make a lot of Immortals. He only made one Immortal and one Warp Prism, and then he went idle. But the funny thing is, Reynor only saw one of the Robos. So I think this may have been a bait from Drogo to think like, hey, I'm going to try and get up my Immortal count, then go for a push or something. But then he goes for a lot of Zealots, and Reynor just didn't scout the second Robo, so he didn't actually expect that coming.
That's a very good point. You know, I was pointing out the gas is not actually being taken. That's something also that Reynor only saw one of them anyways. Like maybe there was a higher level trick that just really didn't get to be executed, as Reynor was still totally prepared, still had only partial scouting. I think it was also just the, like, there were some other factors as well. Like, cool idea.
Yeah.
Love seeing tricks, right? That's kind of a Protoss thing to do, but there's so much creep spread that wasn't taken care of, that Centrifugal Hook Banelings were always going to do rather well, even if it was a lot of Immortals. And this is still an issue for Drogo, who's really lost control of the map, lost control of the game, and just, he's going to go for their attack, it looks like, not go down the path of just macro and defend, but I'm not sure that's going to look pretty, again, with all this creep spread, with Reynor controlling it.
Yeah, I don't know how Drogo is going to be able to make this kind of engagement work unless he just gets an absolutely phenomenal position with those Archons or something. But Zealot counterattack on the south side. This is one way to try and bring things back. But look at this. Banelings are already here alongside those Hydras, shutting that down. This maybe opens up an opportunity for the army to move up to the north side, but he doesn't actually even get the creep tumors over there. And that Baneling drop, like you pointed out, is heading its way on the north side of the map to try and get some damage done to that third.
You know, Drogo's expanding, which I do prefer this. I think if he had moved in and just tried to win the game desperately, I think he would have died.
Oh my God, that's so many Archons.
But he doesn't go up to Storm or really add in a ton more Immortals. He is still just mostly on these the Archon charge lot. Not many spellcasters in here.
It's also kind of interesting because we see a Spire of all things from Reynor, which, you know, you're going for Ling Bling. It kind of makes sense oftentimes to go for the, like, a Muta follow-up over here. But is that going to... Okay, it's with the Hive, though, so I guess it's for the Greater Spire, right? Is Reynor actually going to be able to safely get up to that, though?
Well, that's what he's going to try and do here. I mean, it's very possible. Drogo is getting a very... Oh, my God. A very mighty army with those Archon counts, though. This is going to be scary. And now the Hydras get a good look at what the army type is. It should be scaring Reynor a little, but he has the ability to max out, and he has the ability to get those surrounds and concaves and use his creep spread. So I think he is fine to get to Broodlords. He just has to take a good enough engagement to make sure he has a supply to. And
oh my God, he finds the Zealots over here as well. That's a really nice catch.
Yeah, I can't actually take them on though.
Yeah, I mean, still just finding him, it says, okay, I know about this. Do you really still want to commit to it? And PtitDrogo is going to pull back. There's the Greater Spire starting on up, and Drogo going for an attack.
This Archon count is really quite intimidating.
Yeah, I mean, Archons do quite well in soaping up Baneling hits. They handle the Lings really well. And, well, okay, those elves are dead.
Yeah. Reynor anticipated them eventually moving in. Now he's taking care of them. He can control the run-bys, as Drogo knows that, tries to get back home. He has no wall? No, that is actually just a full wall, so.
Yeah. He knows who he's playing against.
Yeah.
Oh, gonna get the Cybernetic score again.
Yes, he is. Yeah. I think that's worth it. I don't know about taking on the Lings, the Zealots as well.
I mean, if you consider the fact that the Greater Spire is almost finished, you kill the Cyber Core, you delay any Stalker Warp-ins if that Greater Spire gets scouted immediately, because that's the immediate, oh my God, there are Broodlords coming, I need something to deal with them move. Blink is starting up, though. It seems like Drogo maybe has an idea about this, and nice stasis trap.
Where is actually that hive? Yeah, he saw the hive with something there. So the banelings got dropped off and then just rolled in to kill 8 probes. Not too impactful, really. It's more about this main attack. There's so many Archons. They're going to easily chew up the banelings. But what about the Hydras? They get a good concave. Maybe they can start rubbing through it. Maybe the sheer amount of banelings will be enough.
Yeah, get some decent connections with the heart of a lot of the Archons. The Hydra's also getting some good damage, and I think that they've whittled down the Archon count a good amount with 7 Broodlords morphing in. Reynor still needs to buy a little bit more time. He doesn't want to lose any more bases. Losing one base, it hurts, but it's okay. Losing another base would be pretty brutal for him.
Oh, his Broodlords are found out, but when they hatch, there they go. They can actually back off and actually be out of the Archon range. They don't really have to, as only one of them dies. A couple more are going to finish up here. The base is taking some economic damage, 14 drones going down, but the base lives, and this army is a bit trapped. Is he going to recall? Does he have a recall?
He's going to actually go further into the natural. Okay, this will actually trap him, and he'll have to recall out, like you said. But half of the army ends up splitting off away from the natural. The Zealot's just trying to get more drone damage done. I think that's a good call in the sense that he still has to get some more economic damage done. We still had 55 workers left over for Reynor, which is an okay amount. More Archons doing damage in the main base as well.
Not bad. The army, like, he kind of took advantage of the, the more expensive units trying to escape, but then dilly-dallied? So it was actually found by the Broodlords. His Archon's going to go down, his Immortal's going to go down, this High Templar is, not that Storm's ever been researched. And it looks like Reynor, while he took a significant drop of drones, is quickly replacing them, still has 4 hatcheries, and has the army.
Yeah, remember that there is no answer to the Broodlords right now. The Archons have to get directly underneath those Broodlords to get any damage done. Stalkers getting warped in, but there's only 6 Stalkers and there are 9 Broodlords. And generally, if you're going to try and dive in with Blink underneath the Broodlords, you need more Stalkers than there are Broodlords.
Not to mention there's heavily upgraded Lings. They do have +3 anadrenal glands to help chew on those Stalkers if they blink forward.
Nice pullback there from Drogo. Doesn't take too much damage. A lot of Banelings being used over there. We end up having some Zealot run-bys, getting actually a good amount of worker damage done. 9 workers, and the Warp Prism still making its way over to the natural. And at the same time, Drogo is getting a kill on that 4th base and finding a lot of the Broodlords totally barren and on their own.
That is a very big deal. Already a nice grab with a hatchery, but then it turns on him as the rest of the army comes through here. He desperately blinks to take care of the Broodlords, but what about the rest of the army at this point? Drogo dips below 80 supply, desperately warping in Zealots in the main base to buy more time.
Yeah, Warp Prism also taking damage from the Spore Caller, gonna have to back up. The Zealots, like you said, they're only here to buy time. They're not actually even here to do that much more economic damage. Drogo just lost such an expensive army. How is he going to be able to replace it? Sure, he did kill a lot of the Broodlords, but those Archons are so costly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Stalkers can only do so much. I mean, they're actually great against Broodlords that are left alone or not that great of numbers, but now it is more about the Hydras again, as the Stalkers can't really match up against them. The Banelings get some really nice connections there.
Yeah, +3 weapon Banelings, one-shot those workers, no problem. +1 flyer attack on the way here for Reynor as he realizes this is going to be all about keeping those Broodlords alive, getting the damage done. He shuts down the Warp Prism and taps out. Reynor is going to take the second game in the first series.
Yeah, he's going to take the first series. There you go. I mean, it was convincing. It wasn't the easiest 2-0, but it certainly was convincing.
Yeah.
Drogo tried some attacks that, like, yeah, I've been saying all these ifs and, what about this, that could have worked against a lesser Zerg, perhaps. Maybe Namshar will be caught a little bit more by some of these mind games that were going down with the robos, like really cool ideas. Just that Reynor still seemed to be totally fine even without scouting or seeing the incoming attack or anything.
It is tough. But congratulations to Reynor. He ends up going into the winners match with a 2-0 in his first series, so looking very strong today. And Drogo is still going to be in the group. He just goes down to the lower bracket match, and we'll be seeing in just a second who he's going to be facing off against, whether it is going to be Namshar or if it is going to be the other Protoss player in this group.
Mana has a verse Alpha Star stat on the ticker.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's also really unfortunate because that stat is not that great in his favor.
It's not. It's like 17%.
But he won the last series versus Alpha Star, which is the most important series.
Yeah, obviously. Probably more important than this upcoming series. Mana versus Namshar. Probably more important.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Little more money on the line for this one.
Yeah, a little bit.
But all right, guys, as we said, we're going to be moving into Mana versus Namshar, another Protoss versus Zerg. Loser is going to go down to face off